All right. I'm doing a react video of this because
Yet
this
again,
is
another
good
girl in my generation
video to talk about.
crying about how she doesn't want to work. Now, don't get me wrong, I know inflation is crazy, and I know that jobs aren't paying you as much as they should to keep up with inflation. However, everyone needs to work an 8-hour day, 5 days a week. That's literally life, okay?
Wrong. You don't need to work if you make smart financial decisions.
I think the problem with my generation stems from everyone started working a lot later than other generations previously. I started working when I was 14, but a lot of people my age didn't start working until they finished college, honestly. And I think that's a big problem. So I think part of it is like they're not used to working.
No, they're used to working. This just everything is a scam. This is the problem that no one is acknowledging and understanding. Why go to college when jobs are not paying you anything and then you're just getting debt and you're getting a useless degree? And the problem is supply and demand. This is the problem that people don't want to talk about. It is not worth getting a college degree when there is so much supply of degrees out there in the workforce and not enough demand. Companies will just go, well, why should we pay you $30 an hour or more when we can just go hire some sucker and pay them 15? They do not care about what you did in life. They want the cheapest labor, and Gen Z knows this. Let's keep going.
But everyone works 8-hour days, 5 days a week, full time. That's how it is. And life isn't fair.
You're right, life isn't fair.
So she actually makes some excellent points. Right now, we have a situation where Gen X is being blamed for Gen Z being crash outs. And if you don't entirely understand the concept of a crash out, I know where you're coming from. Thankfully, we have a video explaining it.
The phrase of the day is
crashing out.
What's crashing out?
It's when you get really mad at something and you like throw a tantrum about it. Usually like when you're like gaming or you're like in class.
If a student was playing silly phone games and lost and like slammed their phone down, we'd say, bro's crashing out.
Yeah.
That's a
there's
crash
like,
out?
There's like terms,
Okay.
it's like a reasonable crash out or like an unreasonable crash out. A reasonable crash out would be like something that makes sense and like everyone can relate to crashing out.
The thing is, this is the problem, is no one listens to the issues that generations have. You know, it's Gen X has these issues, Gen Z has these issues, millennials have these issues, even boomers have had these issues. The thing is, it's the system that is in place. It's designed to benefit the rich, not the poor. So if you want to benefit from the system, you have to get rich. Now, the issue is, how do you get rich? You can work multiple jobs and save money, but that might not beat inflation, because generally what happens, and if you look at history, this is why you need to learn history, is there has been inflation, and then there's been a recession. And then once the recession hits, the people who own all the assets buy more assets for pennies on the dollar because everything's crashed. And then it all resets again, and people get poorer, and the rich people get richer. That's the problem that is happening in society. And it doesn't just affect Gen Zs, it affects millennials, it affects boomers, it affects Gen Xers, it affects everybody, but nobody wants to talk about that. You have morons everywhere that think they know everything, and I'm not going to sit and claim I know everything, but I am going to sit and show you the reality of life. It is not just one generation. Every generation has suffered. Every generation has had problems. And I'm really tired of the people like this blaming it on Gen Z, or blaming it on millennials, or blaming it on Gen X, or blaming it on boomers. We're all having the same we're all eating the same shit sandwich, and it's time to acknowledge that we're all eating that same shit sandwich, and we all need to come together and figure out how to fix the problem, not blame each other.
It's like unreasonable. It's like they shouldn't have crashed out for that. That's just stupid.
So there's levels of crashing out legitimacy.
Yeah.
I learned something today.
I have to say it's pretty amazing because, like, you know, I don't understand what the hell
What
Gen
does this
Z is
have to do
talking
with
about
Gen Z?
sometimes with some of their slangs, but the millennials do.
Why does it
And
matter?
even some of the, I guess that's Zennial maybe. So they're keeping up with
What
the
does the
Gen Z
slang have
lexicon. I
anything to
try to
do
keep up
with
with the
Gen
lexicon,
Z
but I don't
failing
really
at
like
life?
these muffins. But still, it does
Okay,
show
I'm
us that there are
skipping
people.
this.
Watch to the end of the video to fully understand the implications of Gen Z being crash outs and what that's going to mean for society going forward. Don't forget to follow us over on Rumble. Most of our content is
What?
coming out exclusively on.
Dude, be quiet.
And
I don't care
furthering the
about your
topic,
advertisements.
after a message from Angry's Crypto, a caster the skills
Okay.
streaming bull run.
You in the hood, like, or
Holy
you grew
crap.
up around where I came from, bro, or in bad neighborhoods, a lot of us didn't have a father figure in our life.
Like, this is just
So with that being said, bro, if you didn't have a
a
father figure in
video
your
to
life,
just
you
say
would usually
Gen
look up
Z's
to
the
people either
problem.
in
It's
your
not.
neighborhood
It's
that's
not
doing the wrong
true.
thing, or you look up to people on the internet
As
doing
I've
the
said
wrong thing.
before, there's
Like your role
problem
model would be
children in
Chief Keef
every
back in the
generation.
day,
It's
bro,
not just
or
Gen
NBA
Z.
Youngboy, depending on the times you grew up in. So with that being said, if we all don't have a father figure, if we all don't have a role model, we have no choice but to base our role models on the people that we see on the internet or the people we see in our area, bro. So that's why
That's
all of
fair.
us usually act the same. Like, if you're from Milwaukee, bro, then you will notice that everybody in Milwaukee wants to sell drugs because that's the culture. We didn't have a father to tell us
For
right from
sure.
wrong, like, oh,
I
you
agree
shouldn't
with
be
that.
doing that. Get you a job. We didn't have that. We didn't have that type of role model. So therefore, what's gonna happen, bro, is you're gonna have a whole bunch of males, bro, with no father that's going around.
But that's not, again, this isn't a Gen Z issue. This is a culture issue, just like this person's saying. This has nothing to do with Gen Z. So, again, what? It's like there's all these points in this video that literally have nothing to do with Gen Z. They're just talking about random things.
Chasing the same.
Okay, so how is that Gen Z's fault? If you're talking about absent fathers in the home, okay, if they were raised in a culture where there was no father, how's that their fault? I don't get it. What's your point here?
Goal to be the best drug dealer in their city. That's usually how it go, and that's what really be happening. And you could argue that it's the male's fault, but it's really the father's fault. You could say these young dudes bad, bro, but look who raised them. Without no guidance, bro, these young dudes would be out here going wild.
And again, to counter argue this point, sure, I agree. That's part of the problem, but we're not looking at the whole picture. This is like saying that the whole reason terrorism exists is because there's bad people in the world. It's like saying, well, you know, um, I can't even think of a good example, but this is just looking at part of the problem. Sure, part of Gen Z being the way they are could be there was no father figure, but also part of Gen Z. Why is that father being pushed out of the home? Is the mom committing paternity fraud? We see the mother doing this all the time. We see this all the time where women are having babies out of wedlock, not making responsible choices, and then they're scamming good men and making them pay for their child. We also see men leaving the home when it is their child, and and in some cases, um, it's not the men's fault. Other cases, it is. It's like if it's a case by case basis, and you can't just boil down something based off of one thing. It's like there are exceptions to every rule. I agree with this point, but this isn't the full picture, and that's what is kind of frustrating. But maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Let's look.
Doing anything they want. You ever notice why people are doing the same thing, bro? Ain't no genuineness nowadays. Everybody trace the next man dreams nowadays.
Now, notice how quickly he blames men for the situation, because if there's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that men do, it's men take accountability. The problem is that he fails to mention the problems with women. He says that it's the
Yeah,
fault of fathers for not being in the lives of their children, but he
yeah, I
doesn't
jumped the gun,
acknowledge,
but
because maybe
whatever.
he's so young, that the
Mm-hmm.
reason why a lot of fathers are not in the lives of their children is either because their fathers are Pookie, Ray Ray, Enrique, Miguel, Pancho. Those are the men that these women chose to have those children with, or the fathers who want to be in the lives of their children were
Aren't
put out of
allowed.
their communities and put out of their homes
Yeah.
by these women.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at modern day society, and he does bring up a great point, the African American community basically collapsed when the fathers were taken out of the homes. Within
Yeah.
less than 10 years of the fathers being removed from the homes in the African American communities,
When they added welfare, that's when you started seeing the rise of single mothers going up. And that was I think in the 60s. I think. Don't quote me on it. Do your research.
you ended up with a situation where something like
But
80%
again,
of black households were now headed by a
I don't
black
understand
by
what
a
this has
black
to do with
woman,
Gen Z.
African American woman. The fathers were gone. They brought Tyrone and Pookie in,
Mm-hmm.
Tyrone, Pookie, and Pancho, and as a result of that, these communities fell apart. And you can see exactly what happened to the children in these communities. But like
Hmm.
I said, the biggest problem are not the males. The biggest
Okay, basically what you're saying, and just get to the damn point. Jesus. The point is that people are driven by incentives. If you incentivize people to have children out of wedlock, that's what's going to happen. That's exactly what the welfare system did. It incentivized black communities to have children out of wedlock so they can be dependent on the government. Go look it up.
problems are the
I'm a
females
little
because it
cold, but
creates a
whatever.
cycle. Many of you, no one talks about this. I'm the
Hmm.
only one, literally the only person that talks
No, you're
about
not the
this,
only
only
one.
content creator
No, you're
that
not.
ever says
I
the
guarantee you there's
problem
other things.
is not so much the men, the problem is stemming from the women. You cannot have a functional society without
Yeah,
functional
it's both.
women.
It's
Think
both.
about this. You have a lot of men who
But
are now
yeah, you're
walking away
right.
from
Men
society, and they're
are required
walking
to take
away because they
accountability
were
where women
pushed
aren't.
away, and yet they are being blamed for
But
walking
again,
away.
what does this have to do with Gen Z?
Modern
You
crazy
said
long
Gen Z
hours
failed at life. What does this have to do with Gen Z? I'm still not understanding that. This should be a separate video. This should not be in your
that are
video.
putting in
I want to know why
never
you
in
believe
numbers.
Gen
They
Z's
didn't
failed
even
at
give
life, so
our
I'm
fathers
skipping.
did not give us that for
Next,
no
next,
women that
next,
are to take
next,
account. Oh
next,
well, maybe we should pay women to have children. It's a
next,
physical
next. What does this have to do? You're talking about declining birth rates. What does this have to do with Gen Z, dude? You're not. Just stick to your topic. I feel like this is just clickbait.
example where contraception is not chasing
Next,
men have
next,
will
next. I'm going
always be
slowly
a
because
laughing basically.
I'm
And
here
so,
for Gen Z failing at life.
and so unless that changes, civilization will disappear. Well, there's a lot of things that I suppose that I worry about,
But I'm just going to talk about this. The reason why birth rate's declining, again, just stick to the simple rule. Human beings are driven by incentive. Some good, some bad. Why do people go to work? Well, they have an incentive to go to work to pay bills because they have to pay bills. Because if they don't pay bills, they lose everything and they go to jail. Incentive number two: people have an incentive to go to work because they enjoy their job and they like doing what they do. That's probably a very minimal amount of people, but there are people that do enjoy their work. Um, about the whole declining birth rates. Is there an incentive to have kids? Well, the incentive right now for most people, and this would back up the data, and this would be one of the reasons why, is inflation's out of control, cost of living's going up. Most people have to work multiple jobs just to take care of themselves. Rent's going up. Home insurance is going up, car insurance is going up, and if you look back and as to why, more people are driving, more accidents are happening, so insurance companies have to raise rates to cover their losses. They also have to pay more people. They also have to pay the adjusters for the insurance claims, and so everyone suffers. Um, reason why home rates are going up, and these are some general reasons. Again, I'm not going to go into the whole big picture. There's more people in the world. There's not enough homes. A lot of private equity firms are buying the home supply, which is creating artificial demand. People are being priced out of the market because what happened in 2020, and I would argue 2021, 2022, everyone's trying to move out of these high cost of living areas and trying to move into lower cost of living areas. Therefore, it's inflating the demand for the housing market. Therefore, everything's being artificially inflated in prices. People are bidding for homes that they can't afford. Um, a lot of a lot of states were doing bidding wars where homes that should have been 300,000 to 400,000 were selling for 700,000 to 800,000, therefore incentivizing other homeowners to go, well, if they got 700,000 to 800,000, I can get 708,000 for my home. And now you're starting to see people getting priced out of the housing market because they can't afford an $800,000 home when it should never have been an $800,000 home. But you have people incentivized by greed and by supply and demand. I don't agree with it. I think it's wrong. But at the same time, where people are enabling this, it's a societal issue. It is not just this little thing. It is a societal issue. And as you look into this and you see why is this happening? Well, it's because people do not have self-restraint. If people had self-restraint, a lot of these problems would be alleviated. The market And we are all just so conditioned to consume, 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 consume. We've been fed this lie that we need to have a home, we need to have a car, we need to work 8 to 12 hours a day in order to be successful. And that is not true. Success is not dependent on what society thinks. You should go out there and find your success. There are people that would, there are people, I've seen people make their own business selling candles, and they live a very minimalist lifestyle. There's people that volunteer, and they, it depends on who you are. I don't know. I don't know you. You don't know me. But I'm for finding out what you enjoy doing in life and doing it. I, again, I'm this huge rant, but this is like one of the big reasons why people are not having kids, because they're going, well, what's the point of having kids if I can barely take care of myself? I would argue that 70 to 80% of people are thinking that right now. I don't want to have kids if I can barely take care of myself. I have to work 2 jobs just to afford a car that I have to pay for to get to work, because if I don't have reliable transportation, I lose my job. I also have to get to work so I can pay my bills. That's the reason why you're seeing declining birth rates, is because it's starting to become more of a luxury than a necessity, and people can't afford kids. That's really what's happening. Until you see the cost of living going down and people believing there's a future for having kids, you will not be seeing people have children. You can sit and throw money at it all you want, but it is not going to change. I guarantee this. People are driven by incentive, and that's why the government is trying to throw money at the problem, because they go, well, if we can just incentivize these idiots to have kids, then maybe they'll do it. And it's like, no, let's keep
And
going.
some of these
God,
things
I
will
went
seem
on a huge
esoteric
rant
to
there.
people. The birth rate is very low in almost every country. And
But anyways,
unless
I'm going to
that
move past
changes,
this because that's my 2 cents on this,
civilization
the
will just,
birth rate.
New Zealand or
Next, next,
That there
next.
will be no baby boom. What America needs and what the world needs right now is another massive baby boom. And I've come to realize it. They need the world, global society needs a massive, absolutely massive baby boom.
My question to you, Angry Sama, is okay, if that is your answer, then how do you incentivize people to have a massive baby boom? And if you say throwing money at the problem, that's not going to work.
To deal with
I've given you my solution. The solution that I think is going to benefit future generations is we need to start making food affordable. We need to start making housing affordable. We need to start making cars affordable. We need to start fixing the insurance system, the healthcare system. You need to restore confidence in the system that has set place in our society. This is why people are not having kids, because I'd argue 90% of people are saying, I don't think I want to bring a kid into this world and watch them suffer like I did. Boomers were brought into this world because the silent generation believed there was a future for their children. They went, "Wow, I'm working a single job. I can have a wife and a car, a few cars and kids, all on one income. This is great. This is a great life. This is a great life. I want my kids to experience this." And they had kids. You're not going to incentivize someone to have kids if they can't support themselves, if feel like they're on the verge of being homeless every day, and they can barely save enough money to cover a $500 emergency expense.
what's
So what's
happened
your
here.
solution?
So we
What
need
is
a
your
lot of
solution?
babies to be
Let's hear
born
it.
over the next couple of decades, combined with global prosperity to sort out the situation. But then on top of it,
How do you
those
achieve global
children have to
prosperity?
be raised to be patriotic. They have to
No,
be raised not like the boomers. Okay, they cannot be given everything they want, but you also
fair
don't want to
enough.
raise them the way Gen Xers were raised, so you end up with a traumatized
Yes, and whose fault is that? Like that's part of the problem. I agree that like some parents probably raise their kids crappily, but that's not the whole reason.
generation that wants to abandon society.
Because if you go by that logic, then that means that Gen Z has no free will, and that every Gen Z is lazy because of how they are raised. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's
And walk
true at
away
all.
from society, because that's what generation Gen X didn't exactly. I'll put it this way: Gen X did Gen X. Gen X was the first walk away generation. All right, Gen Xers are happily living their best lives under their best rock. That's really how it is. So
I would argue the same point with Gen Z. Gen Z's just they're they see the bullshit and the corruption in society, and they're saying no thanks. I don't want to participate in this shit show of a society.
you don't, they're the break glass in case of emergency generation. And while there are some Gen Xers who will help to rebuild society, many of them will basically tell you better mind your business and leave them alone. And y'all know who I'm talking about. So it's not even a game. I've heard this saying already that millennials will be the ones that will have to save all of us. Millennials are tired as hell. A lot of the older millennials are tired as hell. Okay, Zennials are late Gen Xers. Zennials are people who are born 1977 through 1983. So we're among the most exhausted of the exhausted because we didn't even get to enjoy a lot of the better times.
So are you saying you're a Xennial? This is the thing I see. This is the constant issue I see with everyone doing this. It wasn't me, it's the next generation. How are we solving problems if we just point the finger at the next
Had
generation?
some good times, but
Like,
we like
please
everything
explain
started to
that
go
to me.
downhill for us like 2001. Many
Okay,
of us like
got it. You're just complaining. Got
in
it.
2000, but it's like and to be put
I'm still waiting to hear
substantially
how you're gonna fix this society.
or any of these things. And I hear, okay,
What's your
you're an
solution?
absolute idiot because the very moment prepare
How
a
are we
meal
an
for
idiot?
you, forced to be physically intimate with you.
Wait,
You
what?
don't want to be in a
Let's hear this.
relationship with a woman whom you have to force to do anything. You don't want someone who feels forced to be there, forced to prepare a meal for you, forced to be physically intimate with you. It's survival anger. You're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot because the very moment she can get out, she's going to get the hell away from you. Okay? You don't want to force people to do things that they don't want to do. So, how
Right.
did we do it before? The reason why, I'll tell you exactly how we did it before. Women were grateful to get to be with grandpa because he was their provider and their protector.
What?
Okay? So, what do you end up having to do? You have to have a society where men are put back on top
Oh,
and
okay.
men
I see what
have
you're talking
access
about.
to women who are fit, feminine, and friendly.
Yeah, but that's the problem. That's not gonna happen. Again, you just contradicted yourself. You said you can't have women forced in those roles, but they need to be in those roles. So that makes no sense. You said, hey, you can't have women be forced into doing these things they don't want to do, but we need to force women to be fit, friendly, and cooperative and feminine. Well, you just contradict yourself. So what?
And the modern women, that's not them.
Yeah, it's not them
You need a
exactly. You can't
society
force
where
them to
men are
do it.
protected and guarded from things like
So again, what's your solution
false
here?
claims. So a woman, if a woman lies, there are extreme consequences, and
Yeah, but there are none. That's the
not just
unfortunate
it's not just
part.
consequences
You're just this is
legally, but
wishful
social
thinking, you know?
consequences. All right. For example, the media has to say, "Oh my gosh, this poor man, his life was just destroyed." Just like how they like to over glamorize and
Yeah, but
play
no
it
one
up when a
cares
woman
about
says
men's
something that
issues.
something happened with
That's the
her.
thing. No one cares.
When a woman lies on a man, they need to basically show exactly how horrible it is, and they need to put
You're literally proving why Gen Z is not doing this.
things into place to
Why they're
prevent such a
walking
thing from
away,
happening.
because it's actually and I'll even call my point. It's the same with my point.
They need
This is how you would fix
to
society,
make
is
men
if you would have a society that
feel
would
like a
stop in being in this consumer mindset and start thinking smart and talking with their money. Corporations would have to no choice but to bend to the will of the consumer, because ultimately, um, that's why they're there. They want to make your money. They want your money, you know? The whole idea of capitalism is, man, I wish there was an easier way to get this food so I didn't have to farm it every day and, excuse me, spend 3 to 5 hours out in the sweltering heat. And the entrepreneur goes, well, hey, I'll open a supermarket and I'm just going to ship the food to the supermarket. All you have to do is come in and grab what you want. But that's going to cost you money. And you go, you know what? I think that's a great service. I'm going to give you my money for that service. They provide you a service, you provide them money. It's an exchange, you know? But I already lost my train of thought.
they have
I'll get back to that
they live in
later.
a society where they have authority, where they are wanted.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. But the thing is, and this is just this you're pretty much proving my point here. You can't change society. You can't force people to do, like you said that yourself, Angry. You can't force people to do something that they don't want to do. So, you know, my suggestion would be, we need to teach people to exercise self-restraint. You could definitely start classes and do things online and do that. And I think I will do that. I'm going to start doing that and actually contribute to the solution, not the problem. But again, you can't force women to do that. You can't force men to do that. So what do? You give people the option to do that. You give people reasons as to why this is going to benefit them. If you start holding back on spending money, you're going to see a lot of, like, if we all as a society, right? This if we all stopped, say, let's say for example, for video games, if 90% of society just stopped buying video games for 3 months, the video games industry would collapse because investors invest millions upon billions of dollars to build these video games so that people will buy them. And if they don't get their investment back within an X amount of months, it's considered a failure. And you could argue that with any industry because every industry relies on people to consume something. And if you look at everything, like go watch some TV, go watch YouTube, you're gonna see ads in your face to buy, 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 buy. Every YouTuber in the world, buy this product, buy my product, buy, 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 buy. Be a good consumer. Well, if you want to be a good consumer and you don't want to get screwed, you got to start doing your due diligence. You got to start researching the things you really want or need. You need to prioritize your needs over your wants. You need shelter. You need food. You don't need a video game system. You don't need the Netflix subscription. You don't need, but in my opinion, I think we forget what are wants and what are needs. Now, if you want it, how are you going to get it? If I want this, how am I going to get this? I don't need a video game console. I don't need, But that's the thing. It's like you need to incentivize people to do that. And I think giving people free resources to help train their brains, because we are so, I used to be in this too and still am sometimes. We're like, oh, I really want that new shiny thing. Oh, I'm gonna make the plunge. I'm gonna make it happen. Well, if we taught people delayed gratification and we incentivize people to save money and go, hey, if you save this and wait X amount of time, you can have triple this. You would see you'd see society change
Where they
drastically.
are happy,
But let's keep
where they
going.
feel safe. They have to be given special, men in society have to be given privilege and power, more so authority. And they have to be given authority over their families, authority over their wives, authority over their lives.
And
Okay?
how are we going to
All of these
achieve
things
this?
have to
What
happen,
is your
but a big
suggestion?
part of it is that you also have to have functional women. You can't just have women
Right? How do you incentivize
who
women to be
feel
functional
obligated
and do
to
that?
be in a obligated to do these things to survive. You're a fool. You're
Mm-hmm.
absolute fools.
Yeah, I agree
If a
with that.
woman does not want to prepare meals, if a woman does not
Mm-hmm.
want to be feminine, if it's not her default, it's not going to work because eventually
Mm-hmm.
she's going to crash. She's going to crash out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I don't have to argue with a lot of y'all. I don't have to share this wisdom with you. A lot of y'all are fools. All right.
That's
And
nice.
one of the
Tell everyone
dumbest
who
things that you could
watches
do right now
they're
is to
fools.
not invest in crypto. Because the ATMs, the
So your idea is to invest in crypto? What?
financial system
Okay,
is on
maybe
the
I
brink. I
misheard
have
this.
to
Let's
share
see.
this wisdom with you. A lot of y'all not going to work because eventually she's
Right.
going to crash. She's going to
Right.
crash out.
Okay. Okay. You
And it's
heard this,
absolute
right?
fools. If a
So
woman does
what?
not want to prepare meals, if a woman does not
Right.
want to
You
be
can't force
feminine,
a woman to
if
do
it's
that,
not
right?
her
I
default,
agree.
it's not going to work because
Right.
eventually
Right.
she's going to crash. She's going to crash out. And it's like,
So alternative, maybe teach young men to start looking for those qualities in women, and if they don't meet that criteria, then they can stay single. That's fine, you know. And if they don't like that they're single, then, you know, I don't know what to tell you. Women control access to the bedroom, men control access to marriages. If you want to get married, you got to start acting right. If you don't want to be married, then don't be married. Continue what you're doing. That's fine. You don't have to be married. You don't have to be a wife. You can be single. Go for it. I'm not stopping you. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy as an older woman, you have no one to blame but yourself.
Like I don't have to argue with a lot of y'all. I don't have to share. I don't have to
You
share
don't
this
have to if you
wisdom
don't
with
want to.
you.
It's not arguing, it's a debate. We're exchanging ideas. I'm just calling how I see it. Arguing is you're trying to be right. I'm not trying to be right. I'm just calling out the BS as I hear it. I could be wrong. Let's throw some comments. Let's share some ideas. That's the whole point of a debate. I think we've forgotten what a debate is in society. I'm not here to tell you I'm right. I'm just here to call out this BS because this crap needs to stop.
A lot of y'all are fools.
That's
All
great.
right.
Tell
And one of
everyone
the
they're fools.
dumbest things that you could do right now is to not invest in crypto because the ATMs, the financial system is on the
What?
brink. The ATMs are going to freeze. The banks are going to close their doors, and your assets are at serious risk. So
What?
discover how to protect your wealth with cryptocurrency at Ender's
My
Crypto
God,
Academy.
bro.
You'll master the skills to buy,
Yeah,
sell, trade, and invest in the most secure coins. Plus, uncover 4 coins that virtually no one
dude,
is taught. You,
shush.
you
No
can
one
see
cares.
30 years old, and it's only by the grace of God that I've made it this far. I don't know a bunch of
No, it's
crash
not.
that have made it this far. Gen Z, I am so ready to milk, bro. You all right? I know dogs. 2 dogs who are aging in dog years that look better than y'all. I am so ready. Y'all know we're telling the truth. We see like how many dogs have we seen? They're like 80 years old in dog
I
years.
love how he goes, you can't force women to do that, but that's what women need to do. It's to me that's contradictory. It's like, okay. You ever heard of the saying cognitive dissonance? It's where you believe in one thing, but then there's a belief that's completely contradictory to that. Like, so for example, a great example of cognitive dissonance is I was speaking to a Gen Xer slash Boomer, and we were on the topic of Social Security. They're like, "Oh yeah, Social Security is great because everyone pays into it and it benefits everyone and it's just hunky dory." I go, "Great. Well, if you believe in that, then you should believe in socialized medicine, right? Because everyone would pay into it, everyone would benefit from it, and be all hunky dory." Oh well, socialized medicine's bad. It's completely different than Social Security. How is that different? If it's being functioned the same and it's running the same, then wouldn't you believe in that? Same thing with like, oh, wouldn't you believe in a UBI then? Because universal basic income is literally the same thing as Social Security. If you really like break it down, Social Security, everyone pays into it, and then when they're retired, they get a UBI. It's a basic income. So wouldn't a UBI be the same thing? It's like a universal basic income. The only, you know, that's cognitive dissonance for you. But there's just a lot of contradictions in your argument, bro. Like, you're saying you shouldn't force women to do that, but then you're saying, oh, well, we need to force women to do that. Women need to be submissive, cooperative, and friendly. It's like, no, they don't. They don't need to. If they don't, if you really want to incentivize women to be responsible and do that, then just let them keep doing it, because eventually it's going to come biting them in the butt once they're 35, 40. And if they're alone and unhappy, that's on them, because it's their choices that brought them to that, not men. So this is why I agree with these channels that are calling women out on their BS. No, it's not every woman, but the good women aren't on social media trying to validate themselves and make themselves known. The good women are keeping themselves, and they're married, right? Because if they weren't married,
And they
that's where
still
the good women are. They're
look
married,
pretty.
and
They
they're
still
they're
look pretty
living their
decent,
life,
like pretty
and
damn
they're
decent.
happy that they're
And then you
married, and they
got
love
Gen
their
Zers who
husbands,
look a hard, like
and they don't need validation from social media or outside sources to make them happy. They're happy with doing exactly what he said. They're happy with cooking. They're happy with cleaning. They're happy with providing their man peace. They're happy with loving their husband. They don't need this. That's where the good women are at.
a
It's true.
hard 46 or a hard 50, hard 50, really, really hard 50. Y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. Men,
I'm still
you
waiting
gotta
to
wake
hear
up and
what Gen
realize that
Z has
this
failed at.
society is completely screwed right now, and
You're
you don't
right.
want to be in a. Some of y'all are idiots. You don't want to be with someone. All right, don't tell me what I want or not, what I don't want or don't want.
You're right. Society is screwed.
Okay,
But this is the problem. You know
okay, well,
it's
don't come
screwed,
and cry. Don't
so
come and cry to me when you do some stupid crap, and you lose everything.
right.
I'm telling y'all don't know suffering. Many of y'all think you know suffering. You don't know suffering.
That's not it's not this is not what it's about. It's not about who suffered the
You don't know
most,
the hell. You don't know what
you know? It's not what it's about. This is not suffering Olympics, who suffered the most. It's about acknowledging the problem with society. You even said it yourself, Angry, that there is a problem with society. Great. How do we fix it? Put aside the suffering crap. Put aside your differences for 2 days, for 10 minutes, and actually sit down and have a discussion with people. This is not how you solve problems.
real suffering is,
I
man.
don't care, dude.
Gen X is being
Everyone suffered, okay?
blamed for Gen Z's being
already made fucking.
Gen X,
We've
no.
already talked about this. It's harder for Gen Z to get a job because they've labeled Gen Z as lazy. And then, since they think Gen Z is lazy, they don't want to hire Gen Z, so they don't hire Gen Z.
I think there's a multitude of reasons why Gen Zs aren't getting jobs. Sure, there's exceptions to every rule. Part of it is they're lazy. Other part of it is they've been sold a lie that if you go to college and you work hard, you'll be successful in life. And that's just not how it is anymore. Globalization has changed our economy so much. Why pay someone in America, right, $25 to $30 an hour when you can get the same quality work out in India and you can pay them $5 a day? You see this time and time and time again. Companies are shipping out these jobs to other countries because they don't want to pay people. They want to maximize profits. That's the whole point of the business. So, and the ramifications are, well, now Gen Z have no way to pay their debt off, and they're going to be in debt for 30, 40 years because the only jobs that they're able to get are like $12, $13 an hour jobs. And there's nothing they can do about it. They've been sold a lie, and it's like, that sucks. You're going to be working for 40 plus years for the rest of your life. Sorry. That's the reality of it. That sucks.
And then they say, hey,
College is a pathway to debt. You should really only go to college if you're going to go into an industry that requires it. Being a doctor, being an engineer, those things are great. But other than that, no.
not
You
as
should
many
not go to
Gen Z
college.
workers, so
That's
they're
my
all lazy.
personal advice.
But if you're calling them lazy and not hiring them, then we can't get a job. And so even when we're trying to get a job, you're just going to say that we're lazy and then you're not going to give us the job. What the?
Yeah,
guys.
the
Look how
gaslighting's
old this
real
young
for
lady
sure.
looks. So she's a Gen
What does this have to do with Gen Z's not?
Zer.
Jesus
She's
Christ, dude.
clearly
I don't
this
care.
individual looks
I don't care how
42.
old she looks, dude.
That's
What
they
does this have
definitely
to do with Gen Z's
guys.
failing at
This
life?
is the crash out. These kids have no real futures. They have no
And why do they have no real futures? This is
real
something
futures
you
ahead
failed
of
to
them. They
discuss.
are so screwed.
Why are they screwed?
These kids are so screwed.
Why are they screwed?
If you think you've missed
Like, ugh, this is so frustrating to me. Why do you think Gen Z is screwed? They're screwed because they've been sold a scam. And I would argue in some cases Bitcoin's a scam. And yet here you are trying to scam people. Like, do your due diligence, do your research, look into things before you start investing, and know that when you invest, the markets constantly fluctuate up and down, up and down. If you want to learn something, here I'm gonna give you some free learning advice. If you're a Gen Z or just any generation, it's free for everyone. I don't care what you do with it. Markets constantly fluctuate up and down, and it doesn't matter what market is. The basic law of economics is this: supply and demand. Is there a high demand for it? And is there a high supply? Great. Prices will be cheap or pretty relevant. If the demand is high and the supply is low, prices go up. That's how this world works. Supply low, demand high, prices increase. Demand high, sorry, supply low, demand high, prices increase. Supply high, demand low, prices decrease. This is why you see things go on clearance. Oh, we have so much stock of this, but no one's buying. Time to lower the price to incentivize people to buy it. We have a large supply of oil and the demand's low. Time to lower the prices because we want people to buy it. We have a large supply of homes and not a lot of people buying. We better start lowering the prices of homes so we can have people buy it. Like, that's the point of supply and demand. And if you look back into every single industry, this is what's been happening. But there are effed up individuals in this world that artificially inflate the supply, which makes the and if the demand's high and they're artificially inflating, sorry, I got my words mixed up. Let me correct myself. They're artificially inflating the demand, not the supply, and they're manipulating the supply. Then you have what's called market discrepancies, right? Now you have people who are wealthy, and again, this is because the system that is currently in place is designed to benefit people who are wealthy, not people who are poor. So this is what they do. They go buy a crap ton of stocks. They artificially inflate this demand, where and the demand for that stock shoots up high, so the price goes up, and then they sell it at a high price, and then that demand plummets because they were the ones that made that demand, right? They bought all the stock, they made that demand, they artificially inflated that demand, and then they sell that at record profits, and then once they sell that price just jumps down because now there's no demand for it. So that's what happens. Now you have no demand and an overabundance of supply, and so the stock drops down and they need people to buy. And that's what happens in the market. And you're seeing that in the housing market too. I mean, go look up the housing market in Florida and any other high cost states. Main reason why I think places are so expensive in these high cost of living states is there is an insane demand for housing and there's not enough supply. So people are having to fight over the supply of housing, and it's with money. And you see people getting bought out, meaning, well, I can't afford a home because I don't have 200,000 or 500,000 to put down on a home because, with homes costing $700,000, 800,000, how are you going to afford that if you're a first-time home buyer? You're not. You're done. You're out. You don't get a home. And I would argue Gen Zs are seeing that and they're going, yeah, this is ridiculous. There's no point in doing this because I'm going to have to work 3-4 jobs and work myself to the bone when we can have a system and a reality that benefits everyone. But that's just not how the world works.
Missed
Well, let's keep
the
going.
boat on
I'm
Bitcoin.
skipping past this crap. I don't care about your crypto, dude.
Put together an
Shut up.
upside control crypto coin.
Yep, you put together great.
Likely
Good
to
for you.
end up in which of the following places, right? This is an interesting poll, and the response.
Dude, it's just like
are Valhalla.
shitting. It's just all it is shitting on Gen Z. Go away, bro.
Affect me, then I don't care. Even talk about it. Those of us.
Yeah, and this is the problem. I'm not blaming any generation. You don't even want to discuss things with Gen Z. And I'm not even a Gen Z. I'm a millennial. We were sold this idea that if we went to college, everything would work out. It was a lie. The whole system was a lie.
That were a little bit like 9 session,
So
where yet
basically, okay.
again, they, as a lot of these people were graduating from college or just had started into the work, or started in the workforce.
I don't care. That's true. It's not our fault where they're headed.
The economy tanked, and it stayed that way for years.
Well, it's not. You're right. It's not your fault that where Gen Z or any generation is headed. And they should have done their due diligence. Not even get but into. You also need to understand why they're upset. Why are they frustrated? They're not just frustrated because they're entitled. Again, exceptions to the rule. There are some entitled Gen Zs, but there's entitled people in every generation. There's always been people who just did not want to work. So just to boil it down to, well, they're lazy, well, they're entitled, to me is ignorant. It's stupid. You're so close-minded. There's so many the events reasons that took place why people are the way they are. And you did go over some of it. Sure, it can be boiled down to how they were raised. It can be boiled down to declining birth rates. But ultimately, I believe that 80% of this is, and there's some Gen Zs that they weren't raised right, but I would argue that most Gen Zs look at society and go, holy shit, this is ridiculous. What point? What is the point of working for 90 hours a week for a crap wage that barely pays my bills? And I'll even go as far as there's Gen Zs that are literally trying to find the cheapest places to rent, the cheapest cars, right? They're doing everything right and they're still struggling. So if you're doing everything right and you're still struggling, there's something wrong, and they're going, and that's what they're doing. They're going, something's wrong here. You know, I think most Gen Zs and just most generations in general just want their hard work to be worth it. We should be incentivizing people to work hard. You know, if you work hard for a company for X amount of years, then you are guaranteed, you know, but a promotion or a raise or something. But that's the thing is, there's no guarantees in life. I guarantee someone's going to say that. Well, there's no guarantees in life, so well, yeah. So if there's no guarantees in life, then it goes back to the question: what's the incentive for working hard? There is none. Because this is what 80 to 90% of the companies do. They hire you, they give you bare minimum BS training, and then they fire you after 6 months if you don't do everything that they want you to do the way they want you to do it. When in reality it should be, as long as it's done right, it's done well, who cares how you do it? But that's not how it works. Companies are getting more entitled, they're expecting more for less, and I think Gen Z is saying no. You don't get to walk into a Subway or any fast food place and go, I want a burger with fries and bacon and ranch, and I want an extra patty, and I want a large cola for $5. And the company goes, you're not getting a large meal with extra bacon, another patty, and a large drink for $5. That's gonna be $15. And then they go, well, I'm paying you, so you should just be grateful and happy that I'm giving you my money. You know how stupid that sounds? You know how quick you'd be laughed out of that restaurant for doing that? That's literally what companies do. Is they go, you should be thankful that I'm paying you this crappy wage that you can't even live off of. And Gen Z is saying, no, this is stupid. I'm gonna go do my own thing and I'm gonna go find my own purpose. And I applaud Gen Z and I salute them. I think that's great. I think you should go out, go do you, go find what works for you, because maybe living in the cabin in the woods, living off the grid is the way for you to do it. Maybe I seen a Gen Z couple that bought a boat, worked for like 10 plus years, and they're living with minimal costs out on the ocean. That's great. I think that's great, because the reality is society has turned their backs on Gen X, millennials. I would even argue boomers. It started affecting boomers when they were young too, but no one wants to talk about this and no one wants to have these discussions. They just want to sit and point fingers at people and go, "You're lazy, you're entitled." Well, I just gave you reason as to why I believe Gen Z is right. And you've just, in this video, all you've done is shat on Gen Z and talked about declining birth rates and incentivizing women to be more submissive, but then I didn't even understand. Help me understand. This doesn't make sense to me. How are you going to sit and say, well, men should be given the power and the freedom and the leadership to do that, but women shouldn't be forced to do things, and men should be taken seriously. Well, that's the thing. You're saying basically what I'm saying. You'd have to change society as a whole. You can't force people to do that. So that's kind of a contradictory statement. Maybe what you should be doing is going, as me as a content creator, I want to see this problem being solved. So I'm going to start giving men this for their dating lives. You should look for these qualities in women. You should look for, and then same thing for women. You should be looking for these qualities in men. You should be wanting to contribute. You should not be expecting something for nothing. If you're expecting something for nothing as a woman, No, that's just not how it's gonna work. It's not how. If you want to get married, you need to show you're marriable material. No guy wants to be around a woman that's entitled, that thinks that she's owed everything for nothing, and vice versa. No woman wants to be around a man that's a deadbeat, that doesn't do anything, is lazy, and just does nothing with his life. You know, but both men and women need to start having realistic expectations for their partners. And if you've got realistic expectations, which in my opinion are, for me, since I'm a guy, this is what I would expect in a woman. I'd expect her, if she's not working at all, I expect her to clean, I expect her to cook, I expect her to not start arguments with me, and I expect her to be peaceful to be around. If she can't do any of that, she hits the road. And that's not me being sexist. That's just me going, look, this is what I want in my life. And if you're not willing to provide that, that's fine. Go do you somewhere else. I'm gonna go do me. But this video is ridiculous, dude. You haven't done anything to help anyone. You're just literally adding to the problem, adding to chaos. But anyways, that's all I gotta say. Peace out.